Jason Sadler, thank you so much for doing this interview, but mostly for accepting to be part of my 12 sculpture challenge. I'm really happy that we're doing this together.
Thank you for
Um,
asking. Thank you for asking.
I really love your work and your style, and I'm so happy with what you created for this. So I'm really looking forward to share it with the world.
The feelings are reciprocal. I love your work, so it's fun to be collaborating
Oh, thank you
on
so
something.
much. So you're an award-winning visual development artist. You worked for Blue Sky, Disney, Netflix. You worked on Rio, Ice Age, Nimona, Spies in Disguise, and a lot more. Can you tell us about your job for people who don't know what a visual development artist is? What does it mean, and when do you come in the creation of a movie?
Oh, okay, great. Um, I think the way I look at the definition of visual development is probably heavily influenced by my time at Blue Sky, at least the way it was structured there. So we often interchange visual development with just design. We'll refer to it or designers or the art department. But I think the way of looking at it is like everything that you see on the screen, it has to be thought of, premeditated and then somehow put on paper, designed, and then built. And that falls underneath the entire umbrella of visual development. And I think like at Blue Sky, they had it divided into three major categories. So there's character design, so all the characters, all the acting, environment design, which would included everything else. So from a mountain to a paperclip, everything you'd see or have to see in props and environments. And then the last one was color, which is another huge thing, which is all the color design that not only influences the character's environments, but is the big thing is all like the lighting, the color keys done for lighting to inform how every shot in the film needs to be lit. And just to describe that, it's like my weight has my background was in product design and industrial design, and I've always gravitated towards just shape design. So that kind of brought me closer to like working on characters and sometimes environments. And I did not actually have any much interaction on the color side. So a lot of people in the department, like working at like a Blue Sky, some people like myself were heavily weighted on one of those three things, and then you have some people that were I call like a triple threat that could just do everything, which is
Wow.
like terrifying. But anyways, that's what I think visual development is. It's nice because like story, we're on the front end of the production line, so um, we get to be there when all the interesting sort of uh, brainstorming and blue sky thinking, just in terms of concepting things for the story. That all is happening on the front end, story and design. So it's kind of a fun place to be as well, too.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
good definition.
Yeah, that's good. Um, so yeah, I had a follow-up question because you talked about your background in product design. So I know you studied industrial design because I did the same thing.
I know
And
we haven't talked about this yet. You like mentioned it on email, so now we're talking about it right now. Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
And then afterwards you studied animation, right? After
Actually, during it, so I
oh
was
wow.
I was going to university studying industrial design in the regular school year, and then at the time, this is the early '90s, but Sheridan College, which was I grew up in Wisconsin. I was going to university in Wisconsin in the
Mhm.
Midwest, um, but not far across the Canadian border in Ontario was Sheridan College, which still is there. But at the time, there was like only two dedicated animation programs in North America that I could find. There was Cal Arts out in Valencia, California, and then Sheridan College, and so I applied there, and they actually allowed international students to come in on the summer. So they had a summer program, which was really great. So in between my regular semesters of the school year, I was
Wow.
running off to Canada in the summer to study animation, and I'd come back and continue with my school years. So
Wow. Busy time.
yeah, it was really fun.
Amazing. So it was not like a switch, like you studied industrial design, then you said, "Oh no, I wanna work in
Yeah.
animation." It was like both at the same time.
Yes, this is the weird thing. I
Yeah.
always wanted to get into animation, but there wasn't like I kind of was improvising things as it went. I was kind of making it up as I went along, but I
Mm.
always wanted to get into animation, and maybe I should just go on right to like one of those schools and dedicate it entirely. But I had a scholarship when I came out of high school that was only useful if I stayed within the Wisconsin State University system, and that kind of influenced my decisions too. But I'm grateful for the way it turned out because I loved having a the full bachelor's like an education that took me through a Bachelor of Fine Arts with that, with all of the breadth requirements and general classes that came with it, because I think those things informed so much of what I'm doing. And I can't believe how much the product design background it is commensurate with working on character design and environment design for film, because it's taken me years to realize it, but design is design. So it's
Mm.
you always start with a problem and then you brainstorm and you keep iterating. It's like the same process whether you're design no matter what you're designing for. And I didn't know that up front. I wasn't, but it helped work out. And I also knew that figure drawing was just like it was everything I learned before going to school. Is like figure drawing is the lifeblood, whether you're going to go in to be an animator or do something. So I just everywhere I went, I just was always taking figure drawing courses, and it's like a lifelong journey on that. But that so it's I think it was I've always wanted to get into animation. I never actually practiced industrial design professionally, but I
Mhm.
really enjoyed the education and like the sensitivity. You know this, you studied it too, but the sensitivity to form and the process
Mhm.
and working with a client and all that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was fortuitous, but I can't say it was all completely premeditated. It just kind of worked out in kind of a good
Yeah.
way.
And super, super useful for your career in the end.
And I see the way you work. I should have known. Like I see the little like your videos, everything that you're just getting down and drilling holes and building stuff. It's like I totally get it. Yeah. Yeah.
Product designers, when you draw characters, you have a very good knowledge of the volume. I can see that you seem to have no difficulty to create a turnaround and do all the shapes. And so I think you see very clearly how your characters are in 3D. Do you does it help you to work with people who creates your character in 3D, or is it sometimes difficult because they don't really see what you see and it's not always exactly the same?
No, the former, what you said, it's always better working with people that are building your stuff because I think it keeps you honest and it like whatever superstitions you have in your head about the way form actually is or turning like it's a constant confronting the reality of that. I can
Mhm.
remember when I first started working when I first came to Blue Sky, I was working on Horton Hears a Who, and just one of the characters I designed. I remember I was presenting it to the modeling department just as a kickoff, and they were asking all these legitimate questions um, about like, oh, what does this character look like three-quarter rear? And I remember the room was full of like 20, 30 people, and I know it wasn't they were asking legitimate questions, but I immediately I could just feel I just started sweating. I was like, oh man, I hadn't thought about that. I haven't done that. So it was like after that meeting, I was like, never again. And I was like, I mean, not that I at that point I remember doing orthographic projections or stuff, things for industrial design, but I just applied that right, that
Mhm.
same method of projecting those lines and even like finding the third view drawing on paper with like dropping a 45-degree angle and finding that third view. Um, I always feel like when you're drawing something, you're never quite you get better with time, but you're never quite telling the truth about the form. The truth kind of comes out. But
Mhm.
um, I always view like those illustographics you make, it's like the start of a conversation. The moment like a modeler starts modeling it, it's almost as if I wouldn't say the drawings are completely obsolete, but you're kind of leaving them behind. You're moving forward, and then you're doing drawovers, and you're progressing.
Mhm.
Just going back to the answer to your question, I know I'm monologuing, but yes, it's always good because I think it's looking back now, decades. of having, been doing this, I can remember back when I was first doing it and sort of the weird just things about perspective and placement of eyes, and I shared an office with a guy that always was doing that thing you do in life drawing. Like you flip the drawing constantly. He like when you put a mirror up to your figure drawing.
Yeah.
God, that's like the biggest. Oh, that like is like a bucket of cold water over the head. It's like, oh, he was constantly doing that, and I think that habit, I just took that on too. And it's like it's yet again, it's like confronting the horrible truth as soon
Mm.
as possible and just trying to
Yeah.
be honest. So yeah, working with a modeler, working with a sculptor, man, it's always a good thing because you always go to good places. And especially like working with yourself and working with people like with Mike DeFeo or Vicky Sauls that I can think of, or some of my favorite modelers.
Mm.
The wonderful thing is they'll take something you've done and then they make it better than what you drew. And it's something that wasn't there. They're bringing their aesthetic to it and plussing it, which is like, to me, that's the
That's
high ground. That's like the wonderful place to be, where you really, it's gone beyond your own design. It's kind of progressing, which is the fun
that's the
stuff.
essence of teamwork. Whatever you do, when you
Yes.
do it with other people with their sensibility and their other way of seeing what you did, it makes it better.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
great. So what's the favorite part of your job?
Oh
That's
man.
a good question, maybe.
I know it's good. I think of like, so for example, with character design, I feel like a lot of the emphasis is put on the early phase, which is fun. It's like the fun phase where you're you're dreaming and you're making concepts and you're feeling it out and you're finding stuff. That is a fun phase. That is like a really fun phase. And then I often, and not everybody says this, but I've often heard it said too. It's like, oh, when you get to the point where the character's been like the concept's been approved, and now you're just you're making the model packs, um, which is like doing the orthographics, the turnarounds or mouth shape, whatever it is that informs animators and modelers to make the character. Sometimes it's like expressed like, oh god, that's kind of like the grind, the dull, like the dull stuff. And I like both, but
Mhm.
I enjoy the model pack stuff just as much, because the honest truth is, like, if a director approves a design, they're approving like a personality only in a couple sketches. But to me, it's like they've just given you almost like, the stamp of approval to go and build this character,
Mhm.
and so much more. The real design that we're just talking about is yet
Mhm.
ahead of you. And it's kind of wonderful, because it's like now you sit down and it's like doing a really fun puzzle. Like you might have only one view that the director approved, like a three-quarter off, and
Mhm.
now you got to find that. You got to find the side and the front and all these other views. And I almost view it like, I was never good at Rubik's cubes or anything, but I almost feel like a Rubik's cube or a crossword puzzle, where you have to protect everything else that you've accomplished,
Yeah.
protect the appeal of that view, and then hopefully not borrow from it too much to make the other views appealing. Like even this character we're working on, sometimes I'm like, oh, I was the way like the eyes were placed and like the far eyes, like, oh, I already can see there's a discrepancy there, and have to borrow from the profile to get the three-quarter to look nice. Sometimes you borrow from one view to the other, but the fun thing is to try and make all the views sing in the end. And
Mhm.
at some point, it's like down to time. It's like, I think if you have enough time, you could get there,
Yeah.
but sometimes the clock runs out. But
Mhm.
so, anyways, those are the two. Like, and then beyond that, I'm forgetting the other phases when it's modeled. Then, like, the nice thing too is, depending on how much budget there is and how prominent the character is, then you get to work with rigging and animation as well as modeling, and it's like
Right.
almost working with the test pilots. Like, I swear, every time working with them, I find it wonderful, because it's like you're confronting the truth on performance. It's like
Yeah.
everything that they'll come back and say, like, you put this shape on the in the cheeks, or you put this here. It's kind of complex. Could we simplify that? And I swear, it always goes in one direction. It's like, could we simplify this, but it'll help performance? And usually it's the right thing to do. It's
Mm.
most often it's getting simplified in a more sophisticated way, and it's helping the people that have to act with it, do their job. But I've not, I can't say always, but almost always, it always is going towards a more appealing design wise. It's going
Mhm.
toward a more appealing place, and it's better for the people that are doing the acting too. So that's really fun too. So I guess there's three phases that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that last one must be very, very interesting and very new because you're working on paper, well, mostly digitally, I guess, but you're working on 2D and then all of a sudden it's 3D and it's moving and it's a lot of new problems to solve and a lot of new possibility. That must be
Yes.
interesting.
And the idea of doing drawovers constantly. So lots of times it'll be all in 3D, but they'll export a JPEG of some view, and you're still working 2D in that sense. But boy,
Yeah.
talk about the concept of keeping you honest. No, it's really keeping you honest because you're giving feedback with cross contours, and now you can really see the form, and hopefully you're not confusing anything. You have to give really a clear message back of like, okay, it looks like this, but it
Mhm.
needs to go here, and here is my and those drawings are usually they're very functional drawings. They're just whatever it takes to convey the form. But yeah, that's a it. You might not get the most portfolio pieces out of that
Mhm.
phase, but it's like it is such a necessary, like a crucial phase in the
Mhm.
process.
It's almost
And also,
like research.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Have you ever worked on 2D animation?
I not for feature. I first started out when I was doing when I came out of university and was working on the Bay Area. I started out working on like educational software, which was 2D, and
Mhm.
then also doing some broadcast and even like internet animation, and that was 2D as well too. I actually I the occasionally would do hand. I was trained to do the hand drawn paper flipping animation
Mhm.
at Sheridan, and I did that a little bit from time to time for those jobs, and then also used Flash a lot,
Yeah.
which I loved. I loved working with Flash a lot. But when I finally broke into feature was when I started working on Horton Hears a Who at Blue Sky, and there hasn't been that much. I think there's the occasional little tiny bit of 2D like animation design, like when you'll have a little cutaway sequence in a film.
Mhm.
That might be a little
Sometimes.
thing. Like
Yeah.
yeah, a film that I'm just finished working on. There is a little like little sequences of that, which I got to do design work to
Right.
inform animation, which was really really fun. But
Mhm.
mostly it's just been I've been working on design for like 3D
Yeah.
CG animation. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the way of working is very different from 2D to 3D. When you're a character designer, I mean, it must be
It
very
is,
different.
but it's funny because well, the trade-off. It's like, like, the wonderful thing is with 2D, you're not building models and doing all that investment, but gosh, you got to put all that pencil mileage in. And the other side with 3D,
Mm.
you're not drawing every frame, but you spend a year just building a character before it starts to get animated. So I feel like it seems like the investment, it's either up front or in the back, but you still end up paying the same amount. But
Mm.
what's nice is you bring all of that. If you've had like 2D training, it all comes to bear because you're constantly thinking of the 2D, two-dimensional shapes on the screen, and you're thinking of the three-dimensional forms, and you're
Mhm.
switching. And at Blue Sky, we had an animator. His name is BJ Crawford, but he was on staff as a 2D hand-drawn animator that did test driving of characters
Wow.
and he did these like beautiful, like when the characters were being designed and when we had the voice talent and like we had examples of voice talent from their previous films, he would do test driving of the character, and he'd do this like beautiful beautiful little clips of animation that would inform the character. And like the sad thing is his gorgeous work was never fully up on the screen. Like there was occasion, like in the first Peanuts film, he did all the hand drawn like thought bubble animation in the first
Um,
Peanuts film, which was wonderful to see. It's not
mhm.
often it got to be on the screen, but he did that. That helped inform design, modeling, and animation, and so like it's cool to see there was places for 2D animators to be on staff and
Great.
contributing in a huge way, even with the CG stuff, which I loved. So
Yeah. well, you talked about voice actors, voice talent, and sometimes the character design are inspired by the voice actors. Um, do you get to sometimes meet these actors, like I don't know, Will Smith in Spies in Disguise, or because
I
your
yeah,
character kind of look like him, but
yes, yeah, yeah. Will Smith was actually at the wrap party, but I was not. I wasn't at the wrap party for that film. I would love to have met him.
you were in the
But
same room.
yes,
That's
yeah,
brilliant.
but yeah, definitely with Spies in Disguise. I mean, there was an influence there. The occasion, like we were out in New York. Lots of times the voice talent was recorded out in California, but sometimes actors would come out, which was fantastic, and it was often I found a surprise. So uh, in Rio 2, we had the one of the villains was a poisonous tree frog, this little pink tree frog named Gabby, and Gabby was voiced by Kristen Chenoweth, who is a fantastic Broadway actress, great voice. And so she happened to just be coming through the studio, and she came over to our desks. It was great. So it was nice to meet her and Jermaine Clement, who was the voice of the cockatoo Nigel. I remember meeting him. Um, Sometimes we don't know the actors up front. So I
Okay.
think like with like Lance and Spies in Disguise, that definitely evolved once the voice talent was arrived at. And yeah, things like Gabby and like I didn't design Nigel, but I'm not sure when those sometimes I think quite often, at least in the case at Blue Sky, that the voice talent was arrived at or was decided upon after a lot of the character had congealed. I think
Mhm.
had taken its form. Um, but yeah, it was nice to meet the occasional voice talent that came in.
Yeah.
Had a
They
nice
must
experience.
be very intrigued by your work, and they must be very happy to be touring the studio, I guess, because this is very different from what they do.
Yeah, particularly. Yeah, I gotta say, uh, we had Vicky Saul's kind of. Oh, she's our sculptor at the studio,
Mm.
and she oversaw this room that had all the maquettes. That was like the place to be. I mean, it was cool to go in the design department and
Mm.
animation, but everybody always ended up in this beautiful room with all these maquettes on the walls.
Yeah.
But I remember Jesse Eisenberg. I don't know if he lived in New York at the time, but I remember one day he did the voice of Blue in Rio, but he came up on his own steam. I think he found his own ride up to the studio. I don't think it was a surprise, but he found his own. And I was like, someone's like, oh, Jesse Eisenberg just was like down in the cafeteria getting breakfast, and then I could tell. I didn't talk to him. I could see like he was talking with Vicky and stuff. I could just see how enthusiastic he was about the whole thing and not even just like, oh, he was dying to like just get under the hood and and see that, which just kind of was really charming to see. It was
Yeah, that's
yeah.
nice. Um, I think I have two more questions. Yeah, that's a tricky one. What inspires you when you create? That can be many things. That could be
Yes.
art, people, music,
Yeah.
places.
I think I think it's I forget whether I think I remember just like when I first was getting so interested in like animation, I remember reading like books um like The Illusion of Life. There weren't as many art of books, but the few that were out were like golden. Like The Illusion of Life still is like a Bible to me. But I remember I don't know which of the nine old men, it might have been Mark Davis, but I remember one thing he said, which is such an obvious statement when I think about it too. But he's like, you can only bring to your work, whether it's like he's an animator, but I can imagine animation design or whatever, you can only bring to it what your total experience of your life is. So it's like fill your brain with as many good things as you can, whether it's, going to see the ballet or going or traveling or reading books. It's like the obvious thing, but I've never forgotten that because it's like it's it provides the impetus to like be constantly filling your brain with good things, you know, and also whatever the subject matter is of the film, that drives it too. It's like doing research,
Hmm.
whether it's, you know, Spanish countryside or, you know, the Brazil, like that helps lead, you know, the research and foundation is inspiring in its own right, but like of course I got my favorite artists, I got my favorite designers, and then there's like all these weird places too. What I like is when you start doing like on the production side of a film, when you start uh, trying to come up with a visual language for the story that's being told, it takes you to a lot of weird places. Sometimes you're trying a lot of new things, but I can think of like even just for example, like Spies in the Skies. Yeah, there's stuff that we looked at that was, you know, to do with the subject matter with like espionage too. But then there's other things like I found this Chinese photographer that the way that he shot his photographs. His name is Fan Ho. Oh my gosh, it's just like this beautiful marriage of complete, like focusing on the 2D shapes in the picture, but also 3D. I don't know. It's just beautiful, and you just find. I don't know. I'm always amazed. Like the basket of references you pull together that kind of inform something. It's often very disparate, and you're like pulling it. You're making this weird synthesis. So a lot of times, like the subject matter is driving research, which I find inspirational in its own right. But
Hmm.
then I keep going back to a lot of my favorite artists, their favorite designers that I just, you know, that are always inspiring. I'm looking over the screen here. I have like I have like a pin board of just a bunch of just miscellaneous images, but things that are like my favorite things to look at, and that's like inspiration too. So yeah, I don't know if that's a good answer to your question,
Yes,
but
it is. Yeah,
okay.
you're inspired
Mhm.
by what you're doing and by the research you're doing, but
Yeah,
also by a lot of other things. That's
yeah.
good.
I had a teacher in college who just said surround yourself with your inspirations, and then
Yeah.
surround yourself with giants in the sense of surround yourself with people that are better than you, which is
Mm.
like I love both of those pieces of advice because the guy that I shared an office with at Blue Sky for a while too is like I learned so much from and got so much better, you know, from anyways. Yeah.
That's great advice. Well, that goes well with my last question. Um, is there something that you've learned during your career that you would like to share with people who are starting or with anyone?
Yeah. Um, well, I think I'd given a talk when we were out at CTN, but it was a thing called the My Two Cents. But
Yes.
uh, things I'd tell myself if um, I could go back 30 years and talk to myself. But
Mhm.
I think first of all, you got like, of course, you got to be constantly improving your craft, and you got to be learning and honing your craft, and hopefully you as yourself, whatever the project is, making yourself kind of the solution to the problem, uh, as it were. But then this is like such an obvious thing to say too, but I think it's just thinking about the next person down the line. I think um, a lot of just good practice, but also job security is like trying to think of the next people that are coming after you in the assembly line and making their lives a little easier. So like in my case with design, it's modelers, riggers, and animation particularly. I mean, of course, the immediate boss is the production designer and the director. Well, you're serving that
Mhm.
assuredly, but in terms of being thoughtful, I think like doing design work. Um, I remember one time I did orthographics, but one of the riggers came up and he's like, "Man, Jason for president, man, thanks for doing that those back views. You just made my life easier." And I never
Mhm.
forgot somebody that just said that in passing. But you know, if you make people's life just a little bit easier, genuinely doing their job, they're like the next project. Hopefully, they're gonna be like, "Man, get that person and that person." And that's the way I think about it too. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
if I recommend people, there's people that I just love working with, and that usually is to do with kind personality, but also being very good, and then making, you know, making life easier for you. So it seems like really obvious things, but those are the big things I think I can recommend.
That's
Yeah.
that's great advice. Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you for this interview, and thank you again for our secret project. And I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward to share it with you, obviously, and with everybody.
Thank you. I'm as chuffed as ever to be asked to be part of this. So I am excited to get out, start playing with the toys, and start building stuff. So I'm so looking forward to it, and thank you for thinking of me and including me in your project. I think this is wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.